Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Business Live. Coming up in this bulletin, to scrap or to suspend fuel taxes? That's the question we are asking as Cabinet meets to respond to the soaring fuel prices, largely driven by the ongoing Middle East conflict. We are live with COPEC for some analysis. Also in this bulletin, National Pensions Regulatory Authority announces plans to prosecute employers over unpaid Tier 2 pension contributions.
The authority is therefore cautioning all employers to especially register a Tier 2 scheme and pay the mandatory contributions for their staff as a matter of urgency. They should desist from the act or face prosecution.
We shall be joined by a labor expert for a reaction. Plus, Second Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Matilda Asante Aseidu, highlights tight coordination between monetary and fiscal managers for current economic stability.
Our reserves significantly improved, $12 billion and growing. And this has been made possible because of the very tight monetary policy stance that we maintained in the central bank.
We have details of these and more lined up for you. Please stay on. Thanks so much for your company. I am Pious Kojo Backah. This evening, the National Pensions Regulatory Authority has announced a major crackdown on employers who deduct pension contributions from workers' salaries but fail to remit the mandatory Tier 2 funds. Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the NPRA, Victor Azuma, said the authority is intensifying enforcement measures to protect the retirement benefits of Ghanaian workers and restore confidence in their pension system. Here's more.
According to the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, it has strengthened its legal and enforcement framework to deal with persistent defaulters. Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, Victor Azuma, said more than 40 prosecutors have been trained nationwide to support the prosecution of non-compliant employers.
Reports from the trustees of registered schemes indicate that some employers have refused to pay contributions of their staff, despite having deducted these amounts from the employees' earnings. Some have not even registered a scheme for their staff for the payment of mandatory Tier 2 contributions, let alone deduct and pay. These violate the rights of Ghanaian workers and must not be condoned. The authority is therefore cautioning all employers to especially register a Tier 2 scheme and pay the mandatory contributions for their staff as a matter of urgency. They should desist from the act or face prosecution.
The authority is therefore encouraging employees to regularly check their pension statement and report any discrepancies. The NPRA's latest warning signals a tougher regulatory stance aimed at ensuring transparency, accountability, and fairness in Ghana's pension system.
All right, so let's broaden the conversation further. Joining us via phone is a labor consultant, Senor Ajabing. Senor, thank you so much for making time to join us here on Business Live. What would be your immediate reaction to the NPRA's decision to prosecute employers who fail to remit the mandatory Tier 2 funds? Good one, you say?
Yes, good one. So good evening to you and then the listeners as well. I think this move has been long in coming. And you know that most of the problems we have with regulation in Ghana is enforcement. So it's a good move to ensure that this is enforced and employers deduct and pay workers made contributions or tier 2 contributions as per the law. And so I am extremely excited about this, actually.
But really, how does NPRA's action protect employees' pension rights, for example, and what recourse do workers have if employers default?
So you see, in other jurisdictions, pension breaches, as in non-payment or non-deduction and those things, in some jurisdictions is actually punishable by death, right? So it borders on the future of employees. Now, most of the issues we have in Ghana about the aged and the difficulties of the aged to live the full haul of their lives is because of issues of the lack of pension pay or the limited resources during, like after retirement. So in my view, anybody who tries to breach the rights of an employee regarding their pension is actually killing the person before the person goes on retirement. It's such a serious offense that we need to treat it as it is, because at the end of the day, the employee will finish serving their country, serving companies, and when they go on retirement, they have very little or nothing to live on, and then they die off early because maybe they fell sick and couldn't afford medication and things like that. It puts a lot of social pressure on society to take care of the aged. And that is why it's important for us to look into our pension systems and make sure that we secure the future of our employees and our citizens.
So with that said, what steps should employers take to ensure timely remittance of tier 2 funds, and how can employees verify contributions?
Well, the process is simple. During payroll processing, the SNIT contributions are deducted. And then by the 15th of the next month, it is supposed to be paid. Otherwise, there are penalties to be paid on top. I think it's 3% of the value. So it's a simple thing. Every accountant knows that you deduct PAYE, you deduct SNIT, and then you pay it off. The most serious issue is that the employers deduct it all right and use it, and they don't pay. And every time, because this money is going to investment, anytime, one single day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month, anytime there is a delay in paying the money, employees lose, interest on the monies that were supposed to have been paid on their behalf. So it is a serious matter, and every administration, HR department of any organization has to make sure that they comply with this simple aspect of, the law in terms of payment of pensions like SNIT.
But Sanyo, how might this enforcement affect employer-employee relationships and potential labor disputes?
I think that no employer has a business in running a business, an organization, if they do not want to comply with the regulations that come with running a business. Once you run a business and you employ people, you need to not only treat them with respect, but ensure that you protect their future. And these are the monies that protect their future. So when you deduct it and you don't pay, you are basically disrespecting the employee and breaching the employee's rights in ways that harm their future. And I'm sorry, I'm passionate about this because I've seen workers go on retirement and from good jobs and become nothing because they don't have pensions to live on, or they now have to start chasing their pensions because the employer did not pay. What an employee should do is that every month they should check with their statement. These days, it can be done electronically. They should constantly check their statements and make sure that it's updated in terms of their contributions at SNIT and also the Tier 2 pension fund managers, so that or the trustees, so that they are sure that their contributions are going. If the contributions are not going, they have the right to be able to report to either SNIT or NPRA in this case, or even the National Labour Commission. So there are three options here where they can go and report or the whistle blow, and then the institutions and regulators will take action to make sure that the employers pay.
And Senor, I've heard some quarters say that, look, it's another thing having, issuing directives and implementing them. From what you said, do you think this time around the NPRA means it's worse?
Of course, I can only hope, because I have been worried. This is one area I've been worried about for quite a bit since, practicing HRM in this country. Now, the point is that they have committed logistics to this. They have committed resources to this. They have trained prosecutors. They have put policies in place and structures in place to make this happen. We pray that nobody or they always say the power from above or orders from above or something. Something doesn't come from above to come and disrupt their work. But I believe and I truly hope that they can push this through and make sure that they enforce at least this aspect of the rights of workers, because it becomes a societal burden as a whole on the taxpayer, and not only the employee or even the employer. Yeah.
Senor Jabeng, thank you so much, Labour consultant. I'm glad you could speak to us here on Business Live.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, let's shift focus to some other stories. Second Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Matilda Asante Aseidu, has attributed the current economic stability to tight coordination between monetary and fiscal managers. She argues that this strong partnership has gone a long way to dealing with some structural and long-standing challenges facing the economy. Madam Aseidu has been speaking in an interview with the African Financial Summit.
So in 2024, December, our inflation was 28% plus. Our currency was 1 cedi or 16 cedis to $1, right? And our reserves were barely enough to cover 3 months of import. Fast forward to 2025, as we speak now, through very prudent monetary policy and clear fiscal discipline and proper coordination between fiscal and monetary policy, our inflation as of September was 9.4% from 28%. Our currency was voted amongst the best performing. We've gone from 16 cedis to the dollar to now just under 11 cedis to the dollar. Our reserves significantly improved, $12 billion and growing. And this has been made possible because of the very tight monetary policy stance that we maintained in the central bank, prudent macro-prudential regulation of the whole financial ecosystem, and I believe also very prudent fiscal policy. But in addition to that, we have also leveraged our gold. We are a country of gold exporters, so we have also leveraged that gold to also generate foreign currency to support, our local currency and to shore up our reserves. And the recent IMF reviews that we've done, the 5th review that we've done, clearly shows the significant progress, the strong reserve that we have built, the strong currency that we have built, and it clearly points to the fact that the mix of fiscal, and monetary policy coordination is working very, very well for us. So yeah, we're in a good place, but something that we have to continue to work at to sustain.
On the economy, economist Professor Peter Quartey is urging government to prioritize the agriculture and manufacturing sectors as key drivers of economic growth following a World Bank projection that Ghana's economy will expand by 4.8% this year. Speaking to Joy Business, he stressed the need for stronger policy interventions to boost performance across other sectors of the economy?
Well, some sectors are slowing down, oil especially, the oil industry, if you compare to last year. And if you listen to the PIAC report, you see a downward trend in our oil production. It's also because we are not investing much into drilling new wells, etc. So we see a decline in oil production, but other sectors are growing. In as much as we've seen growth in services, most of it's not high value services, and I would have wished that we focus attention on growing agriculture, growing industry or manufacturing as we grow the services sector. I believe if we want to provide more jobs, these are the critical sectors we need to grow, in addition to adding value to agriculture. It's very likely we'll have a single-digit inflation, but again, you base your forecast on what is happening currently, and then you can then project into the future. Again, the political tensions, the war going on, the increase in oil prices, which has had repercussions on cost of fuel, also on gold prices, on cocoa prices, declining. Certainly, one could see the total effects on prices, and they are very much right in saying that inflation would perhaps not ease, but might increase in the immediate term.
Let's now pause for a breather. We'll be right back with more.
How may I help you today?
We'd like to open a bank account.
Sign here, sign here, sign here, and here. And now you draw direction to your house. I need your thumbprint. And I'll need your birth certificate too. No, I need the original.
A lot has changed since you banked like this. So have we. We've made it easier than ever to open an account online and bank on the go through our mobile app, online banking, and more. EcoBank, a better way to bank your way.
Sign here, and here.
EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Mini Ojo, from the connection man. Yo pebia meso too. Come. Mix patcho me shabo su kanka. Fukawi. See what kiosk number 22. That's all show brajo. Oh meso too. So around. Yes. Mommy, you show our unya so well. Hello. You show our uko boats. See what last stop. That's all show Sister Rose. Hold up. Sister Rose, me send no customer be. So to no mommy. Also Ukia so smart. See what circle? Boys need nyanya walk up. You killer. Sound. Bro, I the info from 6 p.m. sharp. Let's saw too.
When we connect our energies, great things happen. Connect to a world of amazing and endless possibility with Telecel. Telecel, connecting lifestyle, connecting passions, connecting dreams.
Telecel, connecting energy.
Hello again, welcome back to Business Live. The ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development has revealed that it will be advancing some significant funds to small businesses in Ghana this year. The move is part of efforts to support the SME sector because of their role in Ghana's economy. Dr. George Ejikun-Donko is the president of the bank and has been speaking to my colleague George Wiafe.
As you are very much aware, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development is owned by the 15 ECOWAS member countries. I'm sure we know all these countries, Benin, Burkina, Cabo Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Conakry, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Nigeria, Senegal, and Togo. So these are the 15 Equatorial member countries. Please, let me draw attention to the fact that despite the withdrawal of the AES, that is Alliance for Sahel State, namely Burkina, Niger, and Mali, despite their withdrawal from the ECOWAS bloc, they still continue to be members of the bank. Indeed, they had expressed their interest to remain shareholders of the bank. So the heads of state actually agreed to this principle, and so they continue to be members of the bank. Now, if we come to the bank, we have a principle. Every year, we rotate the venue of the AGM. Remember that Honorable Dr. Atto is the current chairman of the Board of Governors, and so Ghana is hosting the AGM. Honorable Forsen is handing over to another minister, specifically the Minister for Finance, the Minister for Planning and Development and International Cooperation of the Guinea-Conakry is going to succeed Honorable Dr. Atto, which means that next year the meeting will be held in Conakry. So the country that chairs the Board of Governors hosts the AGM, and that is why we are here in Ghana.
Let me come to the plan for member countries or shareholders in terms of funding, and I'll be biased here. Let's look at Ghana for this year in terms of what is the plan in assisting the economy Ghana when it comes to financing, advisory, fresh investment, support for a country like Ghana. And I'll be biased here, Mr. President.
As you are very much aware, the private sector plays a very key role in employing many people in the economy. In other words, you look at the job market, a number of people are employed by the private sector, and that is why, as an institution, what we're going to do this year in terms of Ghana specifically is to actually devote a lot of commitments, send a lot of money, resources to the commercial banks for on-lending to the SMEs and SMIs. The idea is that since the commercial banks are closer to these promoters and entrepreneurs, it will be easier and faster for us to go through the commercial banks and ensure that these monies get to the SMEs and SMIs for them to increase productivity, to enable them to employ more people and to boost the economy of Ghana.
And Mr. President, do I get from you the challenge of then the long-term capital? It's where you also come in as well, because most of these small businesses, the challenge for them, or these commercial banks, is getting access to long-term funds at some favorable interest rates for them to lend to some of these small businesses.
Exactly, and that is why we, as a development bank, remember EBID is a development bank, so we actually lend on long-term basis, sometimes 7 up to 10 years and sometimes even 15 years. If you look at the commercial banks, their tenures are very, very short, 2-3 years. So as a development bank, we come in to actually fill that gap, giving them long-term funding. And of course, some of them are even concessionary, because I can tell you that our maximum interest rate is less than 10% in terms of dollar, in terms of the euro, and in terms even of the CFA. So you wouldn't get these terms and conditions from any commercial bank, not only in Ghana but across all the 15 countries that we work in.
What about technical support? Sometimes it's said that the problem with some of these SMEs is not just about the funding, but also the advisory and then the technical support, taking them from one stage and then even growing them as well. Would the bank be playing any role in working with some of these commercial banks, looking at your expertise in the region to assist them when it comes to some technical support as well?
Yeah, thank you very much. So, as a bank, we also support technical, competencies and capabilities. We try to also, support with grants. We will not directly come in and then organize some of these technical, workshops or events to actually, boost and to enhance the competencies of these promoters. But what we do is that we sometimes extend grants to the banks and all to the other organizations for them to run this training for us. And so we have been doing that occasionally, depending upon the nature of the project that we want to embark on.
Let me also come to the host country, Ghana, and we have been reading some of your economic reports, projections and predictions and all those things. The economy has seen some great stability over the past 1 year. For you, as a development bank, what do you make of this development, that one of your member countries is turning the corner, the economy is stabilizing. It has implications actually when you also come into support. What do you make of the economic numbers, the growth numbers, and the stability that the country has recorded over the past 1 year?
Okay, so Ghana's economic performance in 2025 has been very remarkable indeed. From a GDP projection of below 5%, the economy is estimated to have expanded by 6%. Inflation decelerated to a single-digit territory, with debt declining markedly as a percentage of GDP. These are positive in every respect. Ghana's continuous need for infrastructure development cannot be overemphasized. The bank has financed several projects within its domain in terms of energy, healthcare, roads, hospitality, finance, SMEs, SMIs, among others. These interventions have undoubtedly supported the growth in economic activity. The bank will continue to intervene in these and other areas, be they public or private. And I can tell you that we have done a lot of investment in Ghana. So far, investment in Ghana is about over $500 million across the various sectors of the economies of Ghana. In the area of energy, mining, roads, there are many projects we have done. I don't know whether you are aware of the fact that we actually intervened in the construction of the Marriott Hotel and the Kempinski Hotel, one of the top financial institutions that actually funded that project. So we've done a lot in Ghana and we are still doing it.
Finally, before we go, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, is reporting that an estimated amount of $434.55 million have been allocated from the petroleum revenue for the last year into the big flagship push agenda. The amount was initially allocated to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, which later created a holding account. Details in this report.
The amount was transferred to a special purpose vehicle account established by the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund for big push funds held in BOG suspense account as feasibility study on the Accra-Kumasi Expressway is ongoing. This indicates that there was no expenditure of ABFA on infrastructure in 2025 since the government is allocating all the funds into big push and particularly the Accra-Kumasi Expressway. This therefore aligns with the long-standing view of PIAC that petroleum funds must be channeled into a bigger initiative to benefit more people for a long time. Meanwhile, project information and details are yet to be finalized and published. Crude oil production declined for the sixth consecutive year in 2025. Production has dropped from a high of 71.44 million barrels in 2019 to 37.3 million barrels in 2025, representing a compounded annual average decline of 9%. This confirms the widely held view that Ghana's oil fields have peaked and are on a downward spiral.
That's our package by way of Business Life. I am Pious Kojo Backah. Feel free to log on to myjoyonline.com/business for some quick reads. Great for serving you.
First Valentine's Day Joy FM handle, Daily Graphic took me on, Times took me on, Spectator took me on, Showbiz took me on. Now, when we started programming, I hate to say this, but Joy FM were monitoring what we were doing. The idea of setting up a school came up. Ghanaian Times took me on. If I've never been to university or sixth form, how am I teaching people? One of my biggest moments in terms of pride was the fact that the late Comrade Dumont made it. And the very first time I saw him on the screen, I wept. If you look at the local stations today, there's nothing but screaming and shouting and insults, fights on air, even to the point of even throwing blows in the station and stuff like that. Somebody will look at me, and when I give advice, they say, oh, they will time apart, you know. But old wine tastes better than fresh wine.
Imagine a future not too distant, where Ghana, once blessed with abundant natural water resources, is forced to import water just to quench the thirst of its people. The turbidity levels in the rivers have risen beyond the capacity of Ghana's water treatment systems, which now strain under the weight of the contamination. The Ghana Water Company draws up mud at intake points, its once efficient filtration systems overwhelmed by the rising tide of pollution. What was once a simple process of purification has turned into a costly, nearly impossible endeavor. This is the Daboase water treatment plant built in the Western region. This plant supplies part of the Western region with water. But today, the treatment system draws mud to process water for the people. The story at the Setrahiman water treatment plant is even worse. The gold-hungry rush of illegal mining has poisoned our rivers with mercury and other harmful substances, seeping deep into the soil, the water, and the future of the nation. With 14,000 NT and still counting, the water company is spared. As the rivers darken, so too does the health of the people. Medical experts and scientists have warned that in a few short years, cases of cancer, liver diseases, and kidney failure are set to rise dramatically, linked directly to the toxic chemicals from galamsey seeping into drinking water sources. Children born into a world where playing by the river was once a joy now face the grim reality of lifelong illness.
Usually, in the mining areas, they use chemicals like mercury. Sometimes, in some places, they also use cyanide. But we also see arsenic. So mercury, arsenic, lead. These are heavy metals, and these heavy metals can form. They can form a kind of complex, which affect, cell activity, cell action. And toxicity, very, very serious toxic levels.
Professor Kwame Ohene-Boabing, clinical pharmacologist and professor of pharmacy practice at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, shares more light on the effects of heavy metals and other chemicals on the health of people in Ghana.
These heavy metals, they can actually affect activities of the brain, the spinal cord, or we call the central nervous system. I mean, accumulation of some of these heavy metals, in the body can lead to, some form of cancers, which can have very significant impact on the health of the individual who consume some of these, the water which is actually contaminated.
Today, families in Ghana are now forced to buy sachet water for basic needs, an expensive habit that does little to calm their fears, as even the plastic-wrapped water is met with suspicion. My name is Richard Kwejenyako, and on today's hotline, I explore why you don't drink the water that flows through your tap and patronize sachet and bottled water, and even with that, you drink with suspicion.
Those days that people saw rivers, streams as their gods, they did not venture to destroy them because you cannot destroy your sacred areas. But modernization has come to dilute some of these beliefs. And I also think that it's cultural because people normally do not pay much attention to water, though it's a very critical or a necessity of life.
Managing Director of the Ghana Water Company, Clifford Brima, bemoaning the lack of respect for the country's rivers and water bodies.
I want to prove to Ghanaians that the water that we treat is wholesome, is up to international standard. Sometimes people get dirty water in their pipes. That is not why we treat it. Our lines are so long. Sometimes your household decides to do connection and they just get a roadside plumber, not satisfied by Ghana Water. He goes, what he knows is to cut, drain, and during the cutting and draining, debris gets in. If it is a Ghana Water staff, he will flush it and make sure that it doesn't go into your tap. But the other person, all he wants is money, collects, and he's gone. Because he's not under any obligation to follow some SOPs, our operating procedures. He is not there, but we will not do that.
In towns and cities across the country, taps are running, but the trust in the water that flows through them has evaporated. Consumers are turning to sachet water, a costly alternative. But even this doesn't bring peace of mind. Even as the pollution of the rivers continue unabated, the managing